In this episode, we dive deep into coaching changes in Philadelphia and Vancouver, how well the Panthers are playing, and the big New Jersey Devils resigning of Jack Hughes. Hit the music. Welcome to Slam Sports Hockey. I'm your host, Peter Bojaranov, and the mic is always on. It's your one-stop weekly shop for expert analysis on every single team. We are a fun hockey community, bringing everyone together. You can find me on Twitter now at pbojaranov, Bojarinov. V as in Victor, formerly at Russia98. You can find the full show at Jablam Sports. That's Jablam Sports. If you have any questions or comments, please tweet us. Use the hashtag at Jablam Sports. Please subscribe to us if you haven't done so yet, and click on those three dots in your podcasting app. Share our show with 3 hockey fans you know. Thank you, everyone. Remember, check out our website, www.jablamsports.com, for our podcasts and even game notes for each episode. You'll get all the links to everything we mentioned on this show, including guests. We've even got articles this year and much more content weekly. For our podcasts, click on podcasts on our website and then hockey on this show specifically, right on our website. Time for this week's trending, and now joining back on this show to discuss what everyone's talking about are Robert Aitken Jr. He's a sports writer at North New Jersey and The Record Sports. You can find him on Twitter at Robert Aitken Jr. Welcome back, Robert.
Thanks for having me. Good to be back.
Also back on the show, I think it's like 4th time now. I think you're me and my team, just so you guys know, we're working on the website and we're making a Jablam Sports Jaguar jersey. And in the future, we're going to have hockey cards with guys who have been on the show 5 or more times. And David's close enough to getting a Jablam Sports Jaguar hockey card that will be on the website. And we'll send one to you, David. You're that close. You're that close.
So I got to be a goalie, though.
You got to be a goalie. All right. But the good thing is you'll probably be one of the first few people to have it on. You, Nick Gismondi, Dennis Bernstein, and you get to pick your number too. And if it's taken, it's gone. Nobody else can take that number from all our guests. So that'll be great. You get your pick. And of course, David covers the Panthers at WPLG Local 10. You can find him on the Chirping the Cats podcast and on Twitter at David Dwork. So, big news dropped. Flyers are like new coaches all around. The Leafs game was wild last night. Wild. They played the first game against the Wild. Then it was even more wild against the Jets with all that firepower. Before we get into any of that stuff, let's settle down. Let's calm down. And let's talk. Devils. They lock up Jack Hughes. Large extension. 8 years. $64 million. So yeah, there's guys. I'm doing my Shatner. Yeah. There's guys like Sidney Crosby, Draisaitl. Oh, they're making $8 million. Yeah, those contracts were signed a few years ago. Then there's guys like Ryan Johansson making about $8 million. First off, is he worth $8 million right now? Or if not, when will he be worth that? Roberts.
He might not be exactly worth it right now. $8 million is obviously a pretty high number, but you're talking about a 20-year-old. I don't want to call him a phenom, but in terms of New Jersey and the way that they have had a history of not really having that young, vibrant talent, Jack Hughes is going, at least he's projecting to be that kind of talent. This can honestly be a steal and a half in 3 or 4 years easily. He wants to play here. He wants to stay here. His brother just got drafted here. His brother is, setting the world on fire in college and can be here sooner rather than later. This is a move now. It's great for the Devils. It's great for Jack Hughes at 20 years old, and it's great to try to build a team around him in New Jersey for years to come.
What type of player is Jack so far, and where do you see his potential going when he's at that max?
Funny enough, I don't think Jack Hughes knows the kind of player that Jack Hughes is going to be right now. I mean, when I spoke to him on the exit interviews, his last interview, essentially when he was a 19-year-old, I asked him if there were kind of different ways that league would kind of view him now that he was no longer a teenager. And he didn't even really understand how to kind of fathom that. I don't think he realized exactly, what kind of player he is, what kind of role he's going to fit into in terms of the whole NHL. Obviously, if you saw his game-winning goal and his celly right after the beginning of the season, you can see he's fast, he's electric. He is a turnover machine when he wants to be. He's versatile. I mean, obviously, Lindy Ruff tried to play him as a wing, and that didn't really work out too well, so he's going back to center. But he can be a premier center in this league for years to come.
I can't wait to see what he has in him. Moving over to David this time, again, for the first time. The Florida Panthers are the best team in the NHL after the quarter mark of the season. 17-4-3. They're playing phenomenal. What's the main reason, if you can pinpoint it, David, that they've started so far, so hot out of the gate?
I mean, on the whole, you probably have to point to the team's depth, just their ability that, a lot of these guys have been together now for a few years. They've added some complementary pieces over the last, between the trade deadline and the offseason, between like Sam Bennett, Sam Reinhart. They added Gus Forsling last year. They brought in a Brandon Montour. And then, you add that to the foundational guys like the Huberdeau, the Barkov, the Ekblad. Mackenzie Weeder's been here for a while now, just as on as Ekblad, basically. And yeah, I mean, they've just been able to kind of churn their game, regardless of, rolling four lines, constant puck possession, constant pressure, constantly pushing the pace. And there's no real drop off, regardless of, who may be out there. And that's given them the opportunity to really, dominate some games. Lately, they're playing well, which is interesting just because they've been out without some of their key players. Over the last couple of weeks, Barkov's been out, Duclair has been out, Forsling's been out, and they're still, churning out the points, albeit in, a little hair-raising fashion with some of the comebacks that we saw last week with the back-to-back 3-goal comebacks against Washington and Buffalo, and then another come-from-behind victory against St. Louis as well. But yeah, I mean, overall, Bill Zito's built this amazingly deep roster, whether you're talking about the forward units or the defensive pairings. And, it's just something that he's been here for just a little bit more than a year, and the moves he's made, that he's basically hit on everything. So it's really nice from somebody who's been, watching and following the Panthers for a long time to see them having this kind of success. And I'm just kind of curious what the ceiling's going to be.
Yeah. Bill the Builder. It's not Bob the Builder. It's Bill.
Right.
He's done a phenomenal job. And when I look at the team and I'm looking at stats, a guy who stands out, and I can't find the jersey. It's the only jersey I bought of a kid that's like half my age, at the time at least. I won't say that I'm double his age now, which is great at least. At least we're getting closer as we both age. Number 5 on the defense, Aaron Ekblad, playing phenomenal again. Last year we don't know really, but before the devastating injury, he was on pace to have probably one of his best seasons. He was on pace to be nominated for the Vezina. This year, 8 goals already, 15 assists, 23 points. He's a plus 21. He's playing amazing. He's pretty much MVP type material. Is he going to be nominated probably for the Norris this year, David?
I mean, for my small part, I would think so. If assuming he stays healthy and he's, once again, we have the opportunity to put him on the ballot, I certainly will be. I would have last year as well. And I mean, he's really picked up where he left off last season. He was having a career year last year, both offensively and his defensive metrics were spectacular. His play in his own zone has just continued to improve year after year after year. And then the offensive abilities just continue to grow as well. And I mean, this is a guy who's still in his mid-20s. His best hockey is still ahead of him. And the way that he's just been able to take control, not only on the ice, and you touched on it, he plays a ton of minutes. He plays in all situations, whether it's even strength, power play, penalty kill. He's out there for everything. He's become a very integral part of the behind the scenes in the Panthers. Like he's like the guy in the locker room that he's been around for so long. And a lot of the guys look to him both as a lead by example guy and as somebody who's, he's just very good at motivating his teammates. And just to see him grow from a guy who was drafted at, it's 18 years old, I think in Philly, that draft was, if I'm not mistaken. And to see him grow into the player he is now and to be essentially a perennial Norris Trophy candidate, it's wonderful to see. And again, so young. I guess just like I said with the Panthers, like I want to know what the ceiling is, like with the team, but also with Ekblad. He's that good.
He totally is. So we've talked about the good, Jack Hughes. We've talked about the good, the Panthers. Let's talk about the bad, the NHL. There's things that are kind of crappy going around, and Flyers, we're going to leave that to the Team ISO guys in the next segment. So Alain Vigneault, talk to you later. But first off, in Vancouver, he's arrived behind the bench. He's going to somehow try to fix this thing, and that's Bruce Boudreau. I don't know. We'll go with you, Robert. First off, if you think this is possibly a good move for them, the thing I want to touch base on really is, when is the NHL going to make this shift, though, on touching on this, to bring in more newer coaches? We've seen a lot of the old guard keep on being recycled. But, like, in my mind, if you have a veteran core, sure, bring in one of these guys, like Boudreau or a Mikey or whatever. But if your young core is like a younger team, like the Canucks, and you have Pettersson and you have the other Hughes, why are you bringing in a veteran then to get to the heads and the minds of the younger generation?
I'm with you. I mean, and you see it a lot in other sports too, where some of the old guard is always considered to be a nominee or a possible replacement for a coach, and you just feel like you get second and third and fourth and 13th chances sometimes, it feels like. I can tell you that when the coaching carousel gets started, it's insane around the league, especially in the minds of fans. I mean, here in New Jersey, you start seeing people that are getting fired, that are getting replaced elsewhere, and all of a sudden people are looking at Lindy Ruff, and I'm like, whoa, relax, guys. You're talking about one of the best coaches of our generation that we've ever seen, and just because things are not maybe progressing as fast as you might want them to be, and it kind of runs in parallel to what's going on in Vancouver. New Jersey's one of the youngest teams in the league, and Vancouver's certainly up there as well. You want to be able to have a guy that can maybe have a bit of a difference of opinion, maybe a different style. If you're going to make a change at the quarter point in the year, you want to at least have a different voice. Maybe not a drastic change. I'm not a huge fan of changing a coach this time of the year anyway, because I feel like it's just too early to really make a shift like that, because it's such a drastic shift.
What do you think, David, on either the move by the Canucks or that whole thread with veteran coaches versus the new?
Well, and for that argument, I just think, it's just kind of like old man yells at cloud, because like it's just something that hasn't changed and it's never going to change. Teams are going to hire who they're comfortable with and who has track records. And, unfortunately, the new guard is just going to have to keep clawing and fighting the way to get in. And I agree with you guys that, but I also don't think it's changing anytime soon. And for Boudreau, I'm curious to see how it plays out in Vancouver. Each time he's coached a team to this point, whether it was Washington or Anaheim or Minnesota, he's stepped into probably a much more favorable situation than what he's walking into right now in Vancouver. And I mean, granted, they have some foundational pieces in Pettersson and in Hughes. Twin Hughes, yep. Jack's brother, his other brother.
Right.
But I mean, it's just, I mean, Vancouver is crazy. For say what you want about, the Eastern Canadian, Montreal and Toronto fans and all that. Vancouver it's a beast. It's a hockey market. And to go into their mid-season and a season that's really been just kind of a disaster, from all standpoints for Vancouver. I want to see how it plays out for Boudreau. I think he's the guy that I'm surprised he was out of work as long as he was, kind of getting back to the original thing we were talking about. So I think they're going to win tonight. I think I might take Vancouver on the puck on the money line tonight, but season long, I don't know. They do have one hell of a goalie, so they've got that going for them too.
David, actually, I'm sorry to cut you off, Pete, but yeah. Dave, you bring up a good point where you're talking about, Boudreau's gone different places and he's been successful where he's gone in different situations. Granted, they're different than what he may be going into in Vancouver right now, but it goes back to this whole thing of, well, the guy wins wherever he goes, and you always hear that when you talk about some of these veteran coach opportunities. The guy's a winner. He's a winner, and he goes this place, and he's a winner. It's almost like being a young kid and wanting to go to the bank and get credit, and they say, well, you need credit in order to get credit, and yeah, he's got a bunch of credit, and that's going to give him maybe a longer shelf life than maybe a younger guy because of his winning track record. But that's part of the problem too. Is maybe you need to have some of these guys come in here. What are you really going to get out of having even a veteran coach like Boudreau coming in? What's the ceiling for this team? What's the ceiling for the Canucks this season that's really going to justify anything outside of, well, he's a winner and we're going to keep a winner around?
Yeah, you're totally right. And I want to see what Aquilini and now Boudreau will do with this team. And I don't know why, but I still feel there could be a trade up the works. So we'll see. Then, of course, the big update and the big kerfuffle that happened with the Winnipeg Jets in Toronto, and already the update is Winnipeg's Neil Pionk has been suspended 2 games for kneeing Toronto's Rasmus Sandin, and it didn't even start from there. I think it even already started the day before because the Leafs played a tough and a very good now Minnesota Wild team, and it was so wild, and of course in my mind Minnesota not so nice team, because I don't know how Marcus Foligno got off lightly by not getting suspended, because he left the bench to start a fight, and then he went in and crashed the net and hit Campbell later in the game. The Leafs were already not in a good mood, and another game 24 hours later, then they play a physical game again against the Jets, and Pionk does that in the first period. That sets the Leafs just off. And a guy who you don't see doing anything crazy ever in his whole career, he's like 38 years old, is veteran, vintage Jason Spezza, and he's probably going to get suspended. There's an option, obviously, because they're going to meet with him in an in-person hearing, possibly. That means he could be suspended 5 games or more. And, of course, Wayne Simmons has already been fined $2,2500 K for that game. So, man, what do you think will happen with Jason Spezza, David?
That's a great question. I've seen it a couple of times between last night and tonight.
Yeah,
it certainly looked like he had a purpose with going after that hit. I mean, he basically had to go down on one knee to complete the play. It was just an odd, you're interluded to it. Like they were already angry, and then what happened with Pionk and the knee hit, which that hit looked more like just sloppiness than it did like trying to hurt somebody, or it was just like bad form. He had his leg stuck out. I don't think he was necessarily trying to hurt anybody, but you still have to clean up plays like that, no doubt. With Spezza, I think he may have been looking for trouble, which is why they want to talk to him in person, or why they at least offered him the option. He doesn't have a history as a super dirty player or anything like that, so I wouldn't expect it to be anything major, but I don't know, man. It's been a mixed bag coming out of the NHL Department of Player Safety this year in terms of how they've handed out some of these fines and penalties. So, I guess we'll just see, but wow. Yeah. A couple of crazy nights for Toronto.
It sure has been. And if you go back to the playoffs, and we all know what happened in game 1 when the Leafs played the Montreal Canadiens. And Corey Perry obviously didn't see really Tavares falling down after getting hit already awkwardly. Went and cleaned out Tavares, and he was gone. And thank God, knock on wood, he was fine after obviously concussions and the collarbone fracture and everything. So he's fine now, which is great to see. And we hope Pionk looked fine. He got up fairly quickly after the hit, but it looked kind of similar. Obviously, there looked like a little bit more predatory action on Spezza's part there, but that's not in his behavior in general. But I think he wears that Maple Leaf like in his blood, and it's his DNA. There's a reason why back-to-back years, this guy who's made over $5 million per year or more his whole career, he's signed back-to-back 1-year deals to stay in where he's born, where he's probably gonna sign as a coach or a scout after his career is done. He's bleeding blue and white, pretty much. He's bleeding blue and white in his brain that he wants to backfire on a person this hard that he's never done in his life for Sandin. So, wow, where do we go from here with Spezza and this suspension? It baffles me. I still think it's gonna be just 3 games, but it could be more. Robert, what's your side on this?
Well, you made mention of it. The in-person interview makes you feel like it might be 5 games or more. The perfect point by David, where this is not a history. This is not a guy who does this a whole lot. This is a guy who knows better. This is a guy who's been around for a long time. So this is surprising to see it come from him of all people. When you're talking about what a penalty or suspension is going to be for a player with stuff like this, I know fans like to joke about the wheel of punishments that, it could go just about anywhere. I would think, anywhere between, I would probably go 3 to 5 games, probably on the higher side, maybe 5 games, just to kind of show they're serious about this. And they should be serious about this because that was a pretty brutal hit.
David, back to you. And we're going to touch just 1 second left. When is the league, and we've talked already about the coaches, but when are they going to go and hammer down on, for these situations, these infractions and these vicious hits on players, especially ones that have been there and done that before, and just go, boom, 10 games, 15 games. When are we going to see that? What do we need to see happen on the ice for a player to be that badly damaged to them to finally start hammering down larger suspensions?
I mean, when you think back to like what we've seen, and I'm thinking going back to like between the Rangers last year, and I'm totally Tom Wilson.
Yeah.
Couldn't remember his name. I mean, considering what we saw last year and the clear and gross negligence and intent to injure, and nothing hockey to do with that, and how that just kind of stated by when you're talking about double-digit suspensions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we're a far away from that. And honestly, I think when you ask him, like, where's it going to come from? The players are going to have to themselves, and the Players Association, when they're negotiating with the league on their new CBAs, like that's where these parameters for how they're able to be suspended and how much they're able to be fined, that's all negotiated. The players are going to have to bend, and I don't see that ever happening, because you've got like, a Tom Wilson bad apple, or, back in the day, a Sean Avery. But these guys are maybe once or twice in a generation that are like, take it to that level. So I don't really see the players holding themselves as a whole accountable for 1 or 2 guys. Yeah. I also don't think you would get a whole lot of pushback if the league decided to make an example out of those 1 or 2 guys either, within what they're able to do. I don't know why they haven't pulled the trigger and just gone to the max that they can go with when just kind of going back to what we saw last year with Wilson, which I don't think what we saw yesterday in Winnipeg comes close to that. I think you saw passionate, but still hockey plays, maybe poorly executed, but it's not like, slamming guys face into the ice from behind.
You can find them on Twitter at David Dwork for David, and for Robert at Robert Aitken Jr. Next up, Team ISO, Philadelphia Flyers. What are the changes with the coaching switch, and is there a trade coming soon? with Adam Kimmel and Jason Myrtetus. Have you ever wanted a one-stop weekly shop for expert analysis on every single NHL team? Look no further than Spezza.Both. We've had guests from James Cybulski, Ardo Cal, and yes, even Dennis Bernstein shows up monthly. We are a fun hockey community bringing everyone together. Find us wherever you get your podcast and type in JABLAM Sports. That's Jablam Sports. Our website is, yes, you've called it, Jablamsports.com. Go download and subscribe right now. You can also find us on socials at Jablam Sports on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'm Peter Rojanov saying, puck you later. Time for this week's Team Icer, or should this have been trending now? Because, wow, the big news drops, and on the panel to discuss all the big news with the Flyers are Adam Kimelman. He's the deputy managing editor at NHL.com, covers the Flyers, who has written 3 books. Adam, is there already a book in mind in terms of what is going on with the Flyers right now?
No, I think there's enough drama to keep people busy and to make a nice story out of it. But yeah, I don't think we've gotten to book-worthy level yet. But let's see what happens after today. Let's see what happens with the new coach. Let's see where they go with the remainder of this season.
And you can find him on Twitter at NHLAdamK. And back on the show, Jason Myrtetus. He's the host for the Flyers, and he has the daily podcast. You can get him on Twitter at JasonMYRT. Welcome back, Jason.
What's going on?
Oh, a lot.
Nothing going on. Nothing to see here.
So let me do the details. The Flyers obviously announced the Philadelphia Flyers have relieved head coach Alain Vigneault and assistant coach Michel Therrien. Is there a team right now that is looking for French-speaking coaches and maybe an assistant coach? I don't know. But they bring in as interim head coach Mike Yeo. Woo! All right, so where are we now? How was the press conference, Jason?
Well, where we are right now is that Mike Yeo's the interim coach, and we'll see how long he is the interim coach for. They're in the midst of 5 games in 7 days, so obviously it's a tough period for anybody to take over and make any kind of significant changes to what they do or what they are right now. But we'll see where this goes, because I think that's the fascinating part is, does Mike Yeo get the remainder of the season? Does Mike Yeo get the remainder of this 5 games in 7 days? Does he get till Christmas? Is it all based on what they see, or is the next head coach a person to be named later? Whether that's Tortorella, Montgomery, whoever that might be, Rick Tocchet, I don't know. But one thing's for sure: the narrative of lather, rinse, repeat of what this season has been. This team can't score more than 2 or 3 goals a game. Has certainly changed, at least in the short term, to what's going to be the next progression of this season for the team with 3/4 of a season to go.
I'll throw this at you, Adam, right now. Who do you think are possible front runners for this coaching position?
You know, I think this could be, I can envision this being a 60-game job interview for Mike Yeo. I think the fair thing, if we're looking that way, could be to allow him to have the season, to see what he's capable of doing. This is a guy with a resume in the NHL. This isn't someone, who has no familiarity with coaching in the NHL. He's been a successful coach. He has a Stanley Cup on his resume from his time as an assistant with the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's been to the playoffs. So this isn't an inexperienced or an out of left field move. I think it's a good hire, but we'll know for sure if it's a good hire if we're talking playoff hockey for the Flyers or not. So it could be a situation where he gets the remainder of the season to show what he can do, to show what he's capable of. And look, it's whoever the coach is, Mike Yeo or anyone else, it's now incumbent upon the players to show that they're worthy of, that they're able to pull out of this tailspin, to dig out of this hole they've put themselves in, because you're not changing coaches again. Now it's incumbent upon the players, because the next change is going to be from what we've all been told is a very tight locker room. The next phase is, do you start subtracting from the roster? So if you don't want to see your friends leave, if you don't want to see your teammates go, the players have to tighten up their skates, pull up their socks, and start figuring out a way to play winning, successful hockey. And it does. It starts for them on the offensive end.
On the offensive end, they need more scoring. Jason, where are they going to be able to find the scoring? And if they can find it, who could possibly get moved?
Well, I don't know if we're ready to talk about moves yet, because I just don't see that the moves are prevalent in the NHL at this time this early. So you got to look from with what's existing. They got to get more scoring from Travis Konechny more consistently. They got to get more scoring from Sean Couturier again. I think he's got 1 goal in his last 15 games. They got to get scoring from James Van Riemsdyk. I think he's got 2 shots in his last 6 games. He's got to be a guy that scores for you. They got to get scoring, when Joel Farabee does come back. We don't know when that's going to be. Is that going to be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or 6 weeks? We don't know. But that part is what it is. But, Claude Giroux's got to give him scoring. Cam Atkinson was brought in to score, has done so, but has been streaky. A lot of goal scorers are, but he's got to be less streaky. So, look, they're a team, if they're going to have any success, it has to be the collective. It can't be one guy that does the bulk of your scoring. If they're going to have success, they got to get it from their blue line, frankly, as well. Guys like Provorov and Sanheim. Sanheim does not have a goal on the year. He's got a guy that he's got some offensive to his, elements to his game. He's got to be able to score. So it's got to be collective. If they're going to start being a team that can score over 3 goals a game, then it's going to have to come from multiple different places. Scott Lawton's got to chip in. He's not going to be a guy that's going to, pot you 30, but he's got to be a guy that can pot you 18. Mm-hmm. So it's going to have to be the collective group that leads him out of it.
Well, they do. They have the talent to do that. You look at Travis Konechny's a 25-goal scorer. James Van Riemsdyk scored 30 in the NHL in the past. Joel Farabee eventually is going to come back. He looks like a 20 to 25-goal scorer. Oscar Lindblom is a guy that should be able to chip in some offense right now. And, putting him on the 4th line, I don't think is going to get that offense out of him, but he's a guy that's capable of chipping in. And Cam Atkinson is a guy who scored in the league before. Couturier, Kevin Hayes, all those guys have produced, and they're not producing now. So it's, as I said before, it's incumbent on Mike Yeo to get those guys untracked offensively, because you're not going to win if you're averaging a goal and a half, 2 goals a game with a power play that's around 9%. So something needs to click, something needs to change in a big way offensively for them if they wanted to begin to dig out of the hole they're in.
Has Chuck Fletcher given these coaches, at least the previous coach and now Mike Yeo, the tools to succeed here? What do you think, Jason?
Well, I mean, that's hard to say, because you're missing Ryan Ellis, who was such an important piece, an important cog for that top pairing to be your right side, right shot defenseman. And so much of what they wanted to do with the previous staff, with Alain Vigneault, was be able to exit the zone as a 5-man unit. And that's one of the things that Ryan Ellis is great at, that first pass out of the zone. In the beginning of the year, I remember getting, text messages and DMs from people saying, hey, did James Van Riemsdyk get faster? And my response was, I can assure you, he did not get faster. But he looked faster. A lot of guys did. Why? Because they were playing faster. The puck was moving up the ice way faster. They were attacking through the neutral zone with speed and as a 5-man unit. And that's what they're going to have to do. But you're missing, like Adam just said, you're missing Joel Farabee. He was the only guy scoring for you of late. He scored goals in 3 straight games before he lost an edge and got hurt in New York and has the shoulder injury. But there are guys on this team that can score. I think this roster, as constructed or reconstructed in the offseason by Chuck Fletcher, on paper was a better roster than the one they had last year. I stand by that. Yeah. But we haven't seen it. Kevin Hayes is now 2 core surgeries. And, at times, like, he went for a loose puck and could have been an odd man break in the game against Tampa, and he looked like a beer leaguer. He's coming off 2 core surgeries. He's not going to look right all year. And he's not the most fleet of foot skater to begin with, but that's not his game. But there's guys that just have to be more consistent, like Konechny, and other guys in Atkinson and JVR. JVR went 6 years and he averaged over 30 goals a year in Toronto. Yeah. Like, he knows how to score, but is he going to the right places to score right now? Those are the questions you got to ask. And a new coaching staff, a new message, you hope that leads the guy to do the right things on the ice, the details of their game. Then it's got to change, or the result's not going to change. You can't score 1.67 goals a game in the NHL and expect to win.
A tidbit for JVR. In Toronto, he did have this little kid named Mitch Marner helping him get the puck.
Not in the beginning, he didn't.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
He ate on the power play.
Exactly.
He played 14 minutes a night and fed on the power play.
Yeah.
So he's got to be on your top power play unit too, right, Adam? And he's got to be net front.
Well, yeah, and you watch the way they've structured the power play, and that's a big reason why Michel Therrien is unemployed right now. Is the power play was not good, and it was so bad that it was taking momentum and it was affecting other areas of their game, and that's where the struggles on the power play bled into their 5-on-5 play. And just watch the way they struggled to get the puck in the zone, struggled to hold the puck in the zone, struggled to get pucks on net, struggled to get bodies to the net. And James Van Riemsdyk, is a guy who made his living standing in front of the net. And look, we've watched him in practice, tap shots on him, and he made it look effortless. And we just haven't seen that. We haven't seen it, this season, certainly not to any great consistency on the power play. He's a guy who needs to be at the front of the net, and they need to get pucks there. And Claude Giroux alluded to it a little bit last night, that they need to get more bodies to net, need to get more pucks to the net, need to be more simple. And look at the goal that they did score last night. Cam Atkinson went to the front of the net, tipped the shot by Claude Giroux, and they have a power play goal. So they need more dirty, greasy goals, however you want to classify them. They look like too much of trying to pass the puck into the net, and that never works. You went out and you got Cam Atkinson because you need him to shoot the puck. They need him to do more of that. Travis Konechny is a guy who needs to be a gunner from the flanks and shoot the puck on net. James Van Riemsdyk is a guy who needs to go to the net, stay there, and tip pucks and cause chaos in front of the net. 5-on-5 and on the power play. They're all capable of doing those things. They've gotten away from it, and they need to kind of get back to it. They need to get back to it in a hurry if they want to have any hope of digging out of this hole and still harboring any thoughts of making a run for a playoff spot.
Yeah, I even noticed in the playoffs, I was like, why isn't JVR on the power play? And then once they put him on there, the power play got a little bit better. That's where he's good. That's where he's good in front of that. Let me tell you guys this. I'm looking at the team, and I'm looking, okay, Ryan Ellis got injured. Now they're on this losing streak. Does it seem like this team fits better with a lot of the new pieces with Ellis and then Farabee and even Cam Atkinson? And maybe does Chuck need to move off or away from some of the old core guys because they're just used to losing, and the new guys are bringing in fresh blood and bringing in a better game?
Well, I think it's easy from a fan standpoint to sit and say, fire this guy, trade these guys, get rid of everybody when the team's playing the way it's playing. But it's not so simple as waving a magic wand and making guys disappear.
Yeah.
The Flyers are in a situation with their salary cap where any sort of significant trade would have to be dollar in for dollar out. So, and other teams, there's a lot of other teams are in the same boat because the good teams are right up against the salary cap. So this is a team that is built to win now. So I don't really see them at this point just dismantling the roster and trading everybody, that they can. Claude Giroux has a full no movement clause in his contract. If he doesn't want to leave, he's not going anywhere. You just signed Sean Couturier to an 8-year contract that starts next season. You did that because you envision him being a foundational element. So can they work around the edges? Can they move guys here or there? Potentially. But it's really difficult to do that. It's really difficult to do that at this time of the year because teams are still trying to figure out exactly who they are. And nobody wants to give up on a season too early because everybody saw just go back a couple of years and look what the St. Louis Blues did. They were last in the league when they came to Philadelphia in early January. And, 5 months later, they're holding the Stanley Cup. Yeah. So you're never out of it until you get that little asterisk next to your name that says you're eliminated. So there's always going to be a chance. So, you can say move on from this guy or trade that guy or start making all these changes, but it's really difficult to do and you really have to make sure the moves you make aren't just dumping guys for the sake of dumping guys. You're going to make a move, and I'm pretty sure this is Chuck Fletcher's mindset. You want to make moves, it's got to be to make the organization better today and better moving forward.
Better today, 3 years from now, and 5 years from now, right?
Right.
That's the way I look at it too. And like this notion of, just start sending guys out of here. Like that's, like Adam said, that's really easy to say. Like I just got a DM while we were recording this from a guy and said, Giroux's as good as gone. Trade him now and get something for him. He's going to sign in Toronto or Edmonton anyway. Well, first of all, I can't see him signing in Toronto or Edmonton because they've already allocated enough money to forwards. Yeah. And you win in the NHL by having defense. That's number one. Number two, okay, he's got an $8.25 million cap hit. And like Adam said, the teams that are, looking to win a Stanley Cup and want that one piece, they tend not to have $8.25 million in cap space. You know what I mean? And what are they going to trade you? To dump the dollar for dollar amount. You're going to get a headache in return. So it's not just this easy notion of, well, shit, let's just get rid of everybody and suck for the rest of the year and look at the draft. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. They're guaranteed contracts, and come the deadline, maybe you eat half of Giroux's money if you're totally out of it, and you trade him off and you get a first-round pick. But this notion that you're going to get a first-round pick and you're going to get Bo and Byram is like absurd to me. It's a rental. So I don't know how, again, you have to realize too, there's another GM on the other end of the phone. You can't put out your trash at the curb and have them deliver you gold in the mail. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. So just like Adam said, though, the GM has to be very methodical and do the right things for this team now, 3 and 5 years down the road. That's what has to happen. Can't just deliver, a body for the bloodthirst of the fan base. You got to do things properly, and you don't do them emotionally. You don't do them when you're reacting on emotion.
Right, and that's why I think if you see any changes in the short term, it's going to be working on the fringes. It's going to be moving out a guy that, you think could bring you a low-round draft pick. But I don't think if you're looking for franchise-altering trades, those are few and far between, and you certainly don't see them. You very rarely do you see them the beginning of December,
or even in season at all.
Correct.
Yeah, those are at the draft or off-season franchise-altering moves. They don't happen right now. Nobody's got the time, the stomach, the ability to do that right now.
Or most importantly, it's a salary cap space. Yep. The better teams, as you said, they don't have $7, $8, $9 million in cap space that they can spend on bringing in player X from the outside. It has to be a dollar for dollar trade, or they're going to wait till the offseason or closer to the trade deadline if they can, wrangle more, if there's a possibility of creating more cap space.
All right, we could talk and discuss this all day. Flyers, it's.
We have been.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
What are you talking about?
Exactly. Thank you guys for joining me again. Jason on Twitter at Jason MYRT, Adam at NHL Adam K. Woo! I'd like to thank our guests this week, Adam and Jason, for really getting into the true problems with the Flyers, as well letting the Broad Street fans know to hold off on any big changes happening this quickly. Thanks to David for always having time to jump on the show, and for Robert for having plenty to say, including the old guard on NHL coaches. If you've enjoyed anything you've heard in this episode or don't, please tweet at me or even our guests. You can follow me on Twitter at PBojaranov or the entire team at Jablam Sports. You can use the hashtag Jablam Sports. That's JABLAM Sports. If you want to also contact us on our website, go to jablamsports.com/contact. Also, you can find all our info for all our guests and our podcasts, for even game notes for each episode, including this one. You'll get guests' info and links to all the things we mentioned on this show. We even have weekly content articles. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify. And of course, click on the 3 dots in your podcasting app and share this episode with 3 friends you know. Please and thank you. Sublime Sports Hockey is your one-stop weekly shop for every expert analysis on every single team. We are a fun community bringing everyone together. Follow us on Facebook. Thank you, everyone. And to every one of our listeners, we're giving you a virtual hug. Stay healthy, listen, be yourself, and stay strong.